Hello and welcome back. Thanks for joining us for another episode.
I am Malcolm Childs.
And I am James Skiffins. And this is Just Making Conversation, the show where we discuss the pins and needles of model making, from the greasy sprues to the gloss coats and everything in between.
Wherever you are listening to us, please do consider leaving a review or 5 stars, as it promotes this podcast to more people to enjoy.
Also consider tossing a coin to your podcaster on our Patreon. It just helps us a bit to carry on making content for you. In this episode, the Just Making Conversation will be all about tools, the basics, the essentials, and those luxuries. Also, what you can't be without.
Without tools, you can't make models. Some tools are better than others.
Do you have a favourite tool in your drawers? Or maybe one you've never used?
So let's have a deep and dirty rummage in our rusty boxes.
To be honest with you, when we decided we were going to discuss this, it occurred to me that I still had got my original box with my original tools in. I thought it'd be quite interesting to have a quick look at what was still in there. My special box, which is my tackle box.
Can we have a look inside your tackle box?
Yes, let's delve into my tackle box. I'll just open it up, as you can hear, on the desk. First of all, we've got a little packet of metal diamond files. That was something I've used for a long time. My dad gave them to me, funny enough. And I believe they may have even been my granddad's, but I'm not sure. I have used those bad boys on any sort of material you could potentially imagine used in the hobby, and they're still fine. But so I've got a German revolver, which I believe is actually from the Action Man range. I don't know what it's doing in here, but that's it. Obviously,
it might be worth something, James.
Yeah, it could be.
Those Action Men accessories, they can go for a pretty penny.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one will. Also, I've got in here a medicine box that's got bits of models that I've saved for some reason. A little tub of glitter. Not quite sure when I use glitter in a model, but it's their black cotton that I know I stole out of my mum's sewing box because I used to use that for aerials and wire and that sort of thing. Also, a knife. You'll see if you look over on the Facebook page the picture of this knife. It looks like a knife. And this was I bought this in France, and it is actually a letter opener.
Oh wow! It looks like a dagger or something.
It is, yes. It does look like a dagger, and I was very worried coming through customs because I thought I was going to get arrested for it. But it is actually a letter opener. And this I use to always open my Humbrol enamel paints and the odd cutting and gouging of things.
Question about that is, have you ever used it to open a letter?
Yes.
Ooh. Was it a good tool for a letter opening?
As a letter opener, it's absolutely perfect. For opening of tins, not so, if I'm honest, because your end of your tool gets bent a little bit. It has survived all these years, some more than 30 years. Can you believe that? Well, anyway, move on before I cry. So the last 2 bits actually in the box, these were my basic tools, is a pair of tweezers, which actually happens to be a pair of eyebrow tweezers. And I will admit that my mum probably didn't miss them too much. And then the last thing I got there again was this was actually something that I acquired from my nan, I believe. And this is actually a nail file for the human hand. So it's got a spiky end to it, so you can get underneath your nails and clean your nails out. And then there's a little bit of a file type surface where you can, when you cut your nails, you can sand the end of your nails down. That was liberated. That was something that went into my box because that was my file. That was my sander. My mum may well have asked where it disappeared to, and I probably said I didn't know anything about it. Yes, there were occasions where I did liberate things without asking. This actually was bought in my local model shop. Well, it was literally one of those things. I walked into the shop and went, "Oh, brilliant! One of those. I know I can use one of those." It is a guillotine type chopper. I wouldn't say it's useless. It's not as good as I'd thought it would be. The one I'd upgraded to is a much more sturdy, much more well-built product with a very small cutting mat inside. Whereas the cheaper version is just pure plastic, and your blades blunt really quickly because they're cutting onto plastic.
And what did you upgrade to?
I actually upgraded to this metal-based, the Northwest short line chopper. So, which makes me chuckle because every time I put it on the desk, I think I've got my chopper out on the desk. But anyway, sorry.
Child. We promised we wouldn't do this.
No, I know. I'm not going to make any puns whatsoever. The great thing about this is this, like I said, this has got a very small square, I would say probably 8 centimeters square cutting mat inside it. So every time you're putting the blade down, actually going down onto a cutting mat. The only disadvantage I have with it compared to the plastic version is the actual cutting arm is solid. So it doesn't move, which is good. It's just a little bit of learning really. But yeah, that was the upgrade, and it is it's a sturdy piece of kit. And my advice would be, if you are in the market for tools, don't go for the cheaper option all the time. My father is a carpenter, so he would always buy tools that were not the cheapest, purely because they A, last longer, and B, you're investing in your abilities.
Well, that's interesting that he's passed that on to you.
Yeah, he passed it on to me. I'm still tight as anything. I squeak as I walk along the road. I'm going to jump in with a tool, 2 tools, in fact, in which I think are a must, which I don't know if you'll agree or not.
Okay.
One's a luxury must, and one's a must.
Ooh.
So my first must is a paint stirrer that is electric. Now, the reason I say that is because, obviously, before I moved on to acrylics, I used to use enamels. That used to be my only thing I used to use. And stirring your enamel tub with a cocktail stick never seemed to really do the job properly, whereas one of these do. But now I've moved on to acrylic. When you thin the acrylics for the airbrush to mix up the paint with some thinner, this just does the job really quickly, really simply. And I think that's a great investment for your tool bench.
I hate them. I find them, well, okay. I don't hate them. It's not like I protest outside the factory or anything. I know them as coffee stirrers. Is that exactly the same design? It's just been repurposed. And I find that a good shake and a cocktail stick does the job for me. I haven't used it, but I can imagine you've got brand new batteries in there. You get your pot paint, you open it up, stick your mixer in, turn it on, and you get a face of paint. I can't imagine being able to hold your airbrush and the stirrer at the same time and then putting it down somewhere clean while you're trying to make sure it's... I can't.
If I'm mixing paint, what I will do is I'll use a little plastic pill cup that you get that's literally stands about, 4 or 5 centimetres high, 3 centimetres wide, something like that. And I'd mix my paint in there. I wouldn't stick the coffee stirrer into an airbrush because it's not going to do anything effectively. But by angling the little plastic pill container that's got the paint in, you can mix it up quite nicely. Control the amount that you put into the airbrush. If you don't use your paints that often, you're always going to have the separation of the paints. And especially I find with Tamiya, the sediment would be at the bottom and you sort of dip into the pot and you'd use up the stuff and it'd be very thin and very horrible. And then you suddenly realise it's because you hadn't mixed it properly. Cocktail stick is quite capable of doing it. So yeah, it's not an essential, but it's for me personally, it's something that I have found one of those things in which you look at and go, I can use a stick for that. What do I want that for? That's a bit silly. But when you get it, you suddenly go, actually, do you know what? I'm not sure how I ever lived without this. And it's a little bit like the Dsipiae super glue adapter, which is essentially a piece of 6 centimetres by 4 centimetre block of metal. Red metal looks very pretty. They're not cheap. Don't get me wrong, they are not cheap. I believe it's somewhere in the region of £30, as I remember. It is so amazing. The little metal pegs you put there, you put your super glue on top of there, and then the mysterious chemistry The glue doesn't start to dry. It stays on there as a blob as you put it on, and you can dip into it to your heart's content for an extendable period of time. I can remember saying to myself, there is no way I'm spending that sort of money on that product. What for? And yeah, I bought it and I love it.
Yeah. You know when you said that you were tight?
Yeah. Enough from me about my luxury tools. How about your luxury tools? What would you class as a luxury that you have within your box?
So the luxury tools are actually quite important. These 1, 2, 3 blocks. Now, if you don't know what a 1, 2, 3 block is, look in the Facebook page because I'm probably going to take a photograph of it. They are milling tools, and they are made of extremely heavy steel, and the block is made perfectly straight. So if I put that down on my table now, like this, I know that that is a right angle. And I have lots of 90 degrees angles. So if you're making something, you need to make sure it's perfectly straight. These are the ones to go for because they're nice and sturdy and heavy, and you can actually use them as tool holders. They're really good, really useful. I think everyone should have two. They come in pairs. And they're not that expensive. And they look really cool. They're really good paperweights otherwise. Really good. Really useful for model making, especially if you're using plastic card and things just to get a straight wall. The other item, it's not luxury, but it's certainly a must. A must. It's a glue stopper falling over tool. It's a glue spill stopper.
It's a holder for glue.
It's a glue holder. Yes, it's a glue holder that you put your extra thin in, and it will not knock over. Let me demonstrate. Okay, so I put my extra thin in there, and I try and knock on over, and doesn't want to do it. And you only ever spill one bottle of extra thin all over yourself and all over your cutting mat once, and then you invest in one of these. It's a disaster, especially if it's someone else's house and you knock over a bottle of extra thin. You're then going to start using these all the time. Because that happened to me. I've got some clippers. I used to use a scalpel to cut the pieces out of the sprues, but now I use clippers. I'm a convert because scalpels I find quite dangerous. And the least amount of time that I use one is the least amount of time that I'm going to cut my own hands off. Especially got kids running around, it was never a good idea to leave a blade lying around. So I use clippers because they're a bit more safer, and these ones that I've got right here are just £2 or £3 off Amazon. Super cheap, cut bits that I need. You can get very expensive clippers. Well, you can if you've got money. It's not like they're just growing off a tree, you know.
No.
The other essential thing I would say is a good pair of tweezers. The ones that I have are steel, but you really need a good pair of tweezers that is not going to bend when you try and pick something small up, and something that's going to be accurate, I would say.
Yeah. A pair of tweezers that points meet together in the correct place and don't sort of meet in the middle of the pointy bit of the end of the tweezers, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely. And again, they're not expensive. Just a good cheap pair of tweezers. Those are good ones. What else is essential? Yeah, so a scalpel, I would say, is essential too, because sometimes you do need to cut tiny parts off the sprue, and the clippers are just too thick. So scalpel, sharp blade, a new blade every project, or every, if it's a big project, then change it halfway through. But a brand new blade certainly will help. I did try and dabble with a sharpening stone for a while, and I practiced as much as my patience would allow to try and give the scalpel an edge again to save a bit of money. But at the end of the day, I just could not get it to be any good. I practiced, I watched lots of YouTube videos. I had a friend of mine come round who sharpens his own blades and lent me his oil stone and taught me how to do it, and I still can't. There must be some block in my brain that stops me sharpening things. I say, new blades, a nice Swan Morton scalpel. The one I use is a 3, and I use a 10A blade, which is this long, pointy one. So if you've got rivets or something like that, you can really get right in there. A cutting mat, I would say, is pretty essential, just to have a flat, cleanish surface to build models on. Yeah, I would say that was pretty important, because you put it down and said, right, this is my modelling area. It's
Yes.
like, to do it on a desk, you'd be worried about marking it with paint and things like that, or even dropping a scalpel on or something. Not necessarily cutting against something, but just dropping a tool on a mat is fine. You don't want to damage your surface. So
Yeah, they're quite essential. I used to have an old desk that I used to use as my hobby area, and it doesn't take long before you realise that you're just cutting into the desk all the time. So yeah, a cutting mat is one of those definite essentials.
doesn't have to be big, because you end up building at a tiny space anyway. So A4, I would say. A4 cutting mats. Recommended. You were talking about your chopper earlier. What
Yes.
I have is a hand chopper. It was bought off a cheap Chinese website, and I wish I could tell you the name of it. So down the bottom end here is really good for changing the angles of plastic. So you put the plastic in there, you turn the little clicky thing to whatever angle, which it's actually written on the tool there, and then you chop. Now, I won't do it with my hand in the way, because I'll probably chop my finger off that. It's a very sharp blade. It's really good for cutting extruded plastic or styrene, or probably balsa wood, etc. But it's a really good little handy tool. And I think it's just only above a tenner. That's what we like, isn't it? Straight edges.
Yes, indeed. So, Malcolm, would you say you've got a tool that's useless?
Yeah, I do. I have a little tiny one. When I was younger, it would be often used. So I bought this set of dentistry tools. I don't know where I was or who I saw it from or where the recommendation came from. Someone said, "Oh, they're really great for rescribing panel lines." And that is a lie, because they are not. The ends of the dentistry tools are not perfect. They're not straight. When you draw it across plastic, it just wants to go all over the place. What you need from a rescribing tool is something that has an edge to it, and it's something that's going to remove that plastic. So I have this as my... It's still in my tool for rescribing box, even though I don't use it for that. I often use it just to gouge holes in superglue tops when they've bunged up. All those little tiny scrapey jobs that you need for something very thin and pointy. It's a super pointy stick is what it is. So yeah, I mean, it's useless for what it's supposed to be doing, well, which is dentistry, I guess. But I'm not a dentist, so I assume they're okay. But it's terrible as a rescriber.
Just as a thought, have you ever thought about using that for superglue?
For dabbing little dots and things like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. This is my alternative to a cotton cell stick for placing dots of PVA or superglue. So I've got to re-rivet the top of this 1/32 scale Revell Corsair. So yeah, I mean, it's not totally useless. I've still got it, but it's not a very good rescriber. Here's a good rescriber, is the trumpeter tool. I really like this. If you line up a bit of masking tape against something, gently run it across, you've got yourself a panel line. And I used to absolutely hate any sort of rescribing and putting panel lines back in once they've sanded off, but now this actually is not too bad. You do have to take your time, and it's a job I don't like doing with the hobby. But this kind of makes it a little bit easier. What else do we need to talk about? Oh! Do you have a photo etch clamp? A tool just for photo etch bending. I don't think you could use it for anything else. It's one of those one-use tools, It does something, but it does it really, really well.
Mine is again, yes, I would agree. It's a luxury item as far as I'm concerned. This is the one I've got in front of me is an 18cm photo etch tool from RP Tools. And this has basically a metal base, and then on top of that, with 3 screw clamps, is another piece of metal that sits on top, which will give you different angles and different lengths for you to bend your PE up against. And I'll be honest, again, very similar to the super glue thing. This is something that I really didn't want to buy. I really didn't want it. I got tweezers. I can manipulate my PE with tweezers. And this particular tool is something in which I will literally, it's there right next to me. I pull the drawer open. I take the tool out. I take the very shiny tool out of the box. I bend the bit of PE. I put it back in the box, back in the drawer, and shut the drawer. It's literally on the desk that long. But, oh my God, it's one of those things in which I didn't realize I needed so much until I had one. And you do. It just saves so much time.
If you're doing a lot of photo etch, that's an essential tool.
Yeah.
Don't think I could be without mine. I don't think I could do it another way. I don't think there is another way you can do it. I think you have to use those tools.
Oh, look at that. That's just something I didn't realise was there.
What you got?
I just found the box of my Exo blades. There you go.
Oh, that's cool.
This is what I had when I was a child for building models.
Ooh. You have to take a picture of that. Put it on Facebook. I think we should mention reverse tweezers. Because as my wife pointed out, there isn't any other hobby or any other use that she has seen for reverse tweezers. And I have to agree with her. I haven't seen them used in anything else.
Yes, I agree completely. Reverse tweezers, if you don't know what they are, there will be a picture up on our social media pages. Basically, the idea being is when you squeeze the tweezers together, they obviously open up, and then when you release them, they hold whatever you put in between the tweezers. A lot of people would use these, for example, to hold on to an item which they're painting, or something in which needs to be held together when you glue it and you haven't got the fifth hand to hold that part in place. So yes, they are great. They come in different ways. So you have the straight reverse tweezers.
Oh, hang on. You've got different types?
Yes, there are different types. There is the straight reverse tweezer, and then there is the backflip tweezer. It literally has a bended end, and it's bent at, I would say, probably about 30 degrees or so.
Say that again. Well, see, we didn't discuss this before we started the podcast. I didn't realise there was other types of reverse tweezers. Is it just two types?
No, I believe there's more than two. I do only possess two. I think that the other one there is has a more of a right angle-y sort of end to it, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So it's just a more angled one. But yeah, they are fantastic. They are not cheap. I can't remember how much they are now because I've taken the price labels off. But I only have 4 of these, two of each design in my toolboxes. These are great. These are really, really great. Only time I've seen anything reversible in that form are surgical tools, but they're more clampy than they are reversible.
You know, the handles on the end.
Scissor handles.
They look like scissors, but they're not. They're reversible clamps.
They're
Tweezers.
a little bit like ice tongs. Have you seen those?
Yes. No, I do. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, they're like normal scissors, but instead of the scissory bit, they've got a clamp.
Yeah, they are actually ice tongs. You can get reversible ice tongs.
That's another episode.
Whole different subject.
I think the reverse tweezers are one of the essentials because they're so useful to hold in small parts when you're painting them. And I also use them to jam them in the end of a aircraft if I'm building it and I want to paint it. It's something to hold on to the aircraft because it will just clamp it for you. Usually up the propeller shaft. But yeah, I would say they were, mine are covered in paint. If I could find them. Yeah, that's certainly an essential tool. As we've been talking about the podcast, I was very adamant at the beginning that I was just going to talk about these little tiny group of tools and how quite proud of being able to make my models with just a very small amount of tools. But as I kind of talk about it, I do have quite a few that are important. I guess it's beyond the basics of tools, when you start talking about rescribing tools and photo etch.
Exactly.
1, 2, 3 blocks. It's next level hobby stuff. And
yeah,
if you've been making models for a while, a couple of years, you're going to start collecting these tools and having them around with you and being used to making stuff with them. But it's interesting that we've actually have quite a similar setup in terms of what tools we use.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. There's a numerous amount of items that I've got in my setup in which, if I'm honest, I don't need. They are luxury tools. But again, that's why I was thinking about it. I thought, yeah, I never used to have a big room. I used to have a tray with a cushion, or my desk that was meant to be for my schoolwork, but I didn't use it for schoolwork. I used it for model making. And I remember that I used to have 4 drawers, and one drawer at the top held a pencil, and the rest were all modelling related. So, that's just how it was. But yeah, that's why I started with those particular items, because it wasn't until we were talking about doing this episode, it made me wonder, I wonder where those tools went. I know I've got them still. I haven't thrown any away. But then when I lie out on the table that letter opener, eyelash remover and ectoblade, that was pretty much my tool kit for more than 10 years. It just amazes me now that I have so many other items that I couldn't really do without. But yet I clearly did.
So it's not always about your tools or how you use them, but moreover having the right tool for the job. It's fine to spend your hard-earned money on luxury tools, which just sometimes turns out to be something you never knew you needed.
By sharing our tools with you in this episode, hopefully this has gone some way to inform you of the basics, the essentials, and the luxuries of tools.
It's never just about the tools. You have been listening to Just Making Conversation
with James Skiffins
and Malcolm Childs. Follow us on Facebook, where we post photos, updates and other nonsense. Just let us know what you are making and what your thoughts are on the conversation on this episode. We have to thank our supporters, who we dearly appreciate. Please support us in any way you can by sharing to Facebook or supporting us on our patreon.com. Next time, the Just Making Conversation will be about the colourful world of paints. Till next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.